Dog owners develop a pretty close relationship with our animals, I guess, generally. I've got a couple of them, Buddy and Belle, and I learnt pretty quickly which commands work best, which is not many with my dogs. But for military dog handlers, the relationship between human and dog is a very special one because it can literally mean the difference between life or death. Shane Bryant is a dog handler who trained with the Australian Army and the New South Wales Police Force. He then took his expertise to Afghanistan, where he works with elite American Special Forces. He tells this story in a new book called War Dogs, and he joins us in our breakfast studio now. Shane, it's great to meet you.
Good morning, Fran. Thanks for having me in.
When you close your eyes, Shane, and you think of some of your moments in Afghanistan, what do you see? What comes to mind?
Particularly where I spent 2 years in a place called Tarankout, as you probably know where the Australian Army is. The country is fairly robust, unforgiving terrain, beautiful mountains, a lot of rocky desert. The villages are filled of compounds, and especially early in the morning when you see the smoke billowing from the buildings, it's beautiful and peaceful.
Is it a memory overlaid with fear?
No, not for me, no, not at all.
Even though you faced some very dangerous situations?
Yeah, you can, Fran, but you just deal with it when it happens.
How did you end up? I know that you did start off in the Australian Army and you started learning about dog handling. You left the Army, I think, over a couple of years, but you've ended up back in a war zone. How did that happen?
Well, I'd been with the New South Wales Police and the Australian Army as a canine handler, virtually just doing routine searches, places for like the Pope, George Bush, Bill Clinton, Olympic Games and such. But this gave me an opportunity to go into a combat zone and test my skills in a live environment. And
how did you find your skills matched up?
Good, yeah, good.
I suppose it's not just your skills, it's the skills of your dogs. Which dog did you take in first?
Ricky.
Ricky.
Yeah, Ricky was a German Shepherd. Pretty much a handful too, especially walking through villages. He was fairly aggressive towards Afghanis and motorbikes, but he was a loyal dog, worked really well.
What are the dogs doing? What's their role? Tell us about that.
They're explosive detection dogs. They're used to search vehicle checkpoints, looking for weapons caches, searching through villages, compounds, all that sort of stuff.
And
IEDs in the roads.
How do you train a dog for that?
A lot of patience, a lot of praise, a lot of repetition. You usually start back off at the training centre, socialise them with a different sense of explosives, introducing them to them, slowly getting them to recognise that the smell as the reward for the ball, so they'll sit, then you give them the reward. So there's a lot of repetition and praise in it and a lot of patience.
How do you pick the dogs, Shane, that would be good for that? I mean, my dogs, if a cracker goes off somewhere, run under the bed, a lot of dogs I've known do that. How do you know the dog, or can any dog be trained to manage explosives and deal in that environment?
No, friend, I can't. The dog's got to have a high retrieve drive, hunt and search drive, fairly obedient kind of dogs.
A German Shepherd's the best at it?
I think you do get good ones. I think probably the best are the Belgian Malinois. They're a short-haired kind of looking shepherd that are a lot more robust, fanatical retrievers.
What about Border Collies? They've got a kind of obsessiveness to them. How are they in this kind of environment?
Border Collies are good. They're probably, I've got a soft spot for Border Collies. I had one in the Army. I actually had one as a training dog back in Afghanistan. They can be a little temperamental and aggressive at times. But if you get the right one, they're excellent dogs.
Is there a kind of an imagery, a perception that goes with this? Like people feel much tougher if they've got a shepherd by them rather than, say, a Border Collie, a cute and cuddly Border Collie?
No, not necessarily. I think as long as the dog's doing the job properly and finding the explosives and it's got like I said, the search and the hunt drive there, I'd take any dog.
There's a lot of distractions in these places, particularly a lot of these places have lots of dogs, lots of town dogs, lots of local dogs. How do the dogs that you're working with cope with that? Does it ever go sort of badly wrong on that front, on just the doggy front?
It can, especially with my first dog, Ricky. He was fairly dog aggressive. There wasn't too many times where if we'd walked into a compound and we're searching it in a Ruzgon and he'd seen another dog, he'd be dog aggressive. Benny, on the other hand, the second dog that I had, he was an awesome dog. He wasn't dog aggressive. Generally wasn't aggressive towards anyone at times unless they got in his little comfort zone. Funny story with Benny was I was searching a compound one day and a little baby lamb come up to him and he started trying to suckle on his teat. He's looking up at me going, thinking, what's going on here? You know, he's all confused, but it was quite hilarious for me to watch him interact with this lamb.
You must get incredibly close to these animals.
You do, definitely. You know, you're living with them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Have you ever lost one in battle?
No, I haven't. There has been a case with American Canine, a company that I worked with before. They had a couple of handlers and dogs get hit by IEDs, and we'd lose a couple.
Now, you're there basically as a private employee. You're hired to work with the US Special Forces. I know from reading your book that you yourself have found yourself caught up in combat. It's not as simple as I'm the dog handler, leave me out of it, is it?
No.
Tell us about that.
Well, most of the times with the US Special Forces, obviously once you initially first get there, they're sussing you out and seeing what sort of character you are. You just bide your time, do your job, get in there and help with the chores that got to be done around the fire base, get out and do the job you got to do out on the road. And you know, after a couple of conflicts out there, we call them ticks, troops in combat, you know, they start to warm to you and take really good care of you.
Now, I've got a dog called Belle. She's a cross between a German Shepherd and a Border Collie. Sounds like she'd be perfect. But can you teach an old dog new tricks?
Definitely, you can, as long as the motivation's still there. But I think the older dogs teach the new handlers the tricks.
Okay. And do you have a favourite dog, Shane?
At the moment?
Well, just through life, you've worked with a few dogs.
I think Benny was probably my favourite dog. I think I've had 4 altogether, but Benny's just he was a good dog to have working around the villages. He was laid back, excellent at his job. Like I said, he wasn't dog aggressive. He wasn't generally aggressive towards the local people. I could work him off lead and know he'd come back to me.
Well, I know you're heading back to Afghanistan, so good luck with that, and thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Fran.
That's Shane Bryant, and his book War Dogs is published by Pan Macmillan.